Hello, everybody at Generation Z. Today's date is August 25th, 2022. And I'm Riel, as most of you know. This is going to be an episode of Dose of Reality that I'll be doing on my own. And this episode, well, first off, it's actually so good to be here. I hope that you've been enjoying the Kraken segments that I've been doing. Hope that you've also been enjoying the constant hustle that Dave has been doing. I'm very impressed and so happy to be a part of this journey alongside him and everybody else that's been contributing to the research in the community. So, today's episode is going to be not a PowerPoint presentation, but actually, I'm going to be doing some reading. And this is actually inspired from the Zoom call that we had last night. And this, as I'm reading, I'll actually just show you right here. So I am reading this book, Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. I'm reading it for a second time to give myself a much more thorough and deeper understanding of the ancient mysteries, the occult, the esoteric, and all that. So the intention with this episode today is to serve as a bit of an introduction as to the esoteric mysteries, but also it's going to be a nuts and bolts episode. So this may be a multi-part episode because I'm just going to see how long it takes. What I plan on doing, and let me just share my screen here. So what I'm going to be doing is simply reading a specific chapter in this book. I actually read it today. And I was very blown away. There's been many, many chapters actually in this book. So it's about page 326. So specifically, this chapter that I want to review and cover for the Generation Z Patreon community. This will not be going public. That's just for the Patreon. It is the fundamentals of Qabbalistic cosmogony. And this is inspired by the conversation that we were having last night on the Zoom call, which I think I'll also do another video to just kind of catch us up on some of the concepts that we were discussing. But one of the big things that I've been really questioning is space, outer space, astronomy, astrology, heliocentricity, all of that stuff. And from what I'm gathering, all of it is a metaphor. So this episode, you can just you can follow along with the words that I've got on the screen, or you can just listen. It's up to you. But without further ado, let's get started. And so I'm using funny enough, the CIA website where they have Secret Teachings of All Ages in their database. So just goes to show you that it is a very important text. So this probably will be broken up into different episodes simply because there is a lot of information to go through. And think of how Ani Osaru does it, but this is a much more gentle introduction. And I'm going to be drawing some parallels and adding some context into what we are reviewing, what material we are reviewing here. So thank you for that little introduction, and let's get started. Okay, so fundamentals of Kabbalistic cosmogony. The Kabbalists conceive of the supreme deity as an incomprehensible principle to be discovered only through the process of eliminating, in order, all its cognizable attributes. That which remains, when every knowable thing has been removed, is Ein Sof. Ainsoph. Ein Sof. The eternal state of being. Although indefinable, the absolute permeates all space. Abstract to the degree of inconceivability, Ein Sof is the unconditioned state of all things. Substances, essences, and intelligences are manifested out of the inscrutability of Ein Sof. But the absolute itself is without substance, essence, or intelligence. Let's just read that again. The absolute, with a capital A, the absolute itself is without substance, essence, or intelligence. Ein Sof may be likened to a great field of rich earth, out of which rises a myriad of plants, each different in color, formation, and fragrance, yet each with its roots in the same dark loam, which, however, is unlike any of the forms nurtured by it. The plants are universes, gods, and man, all nourished by Ein Sof, and with their source in one definitionless essence, with their spirits, souls, and bodies fashioned from this essence, and doomed, like the plant, to return to the black ground, Ein Sof, the only immortal whence they came. Okay, so without even going further into it right now, for me, what stands out is the concept of, so the term Ein Sof, and I can't help but draw the parallel to the Gnostic teachings where Sophia is the divine feminine, essentially the creator. So I wonder, is this inspiring the Gnostics, or are the Gnostics also the Kabbalists? How does that play in together? Well, we'll probably be exploring that very soon. But to continue here, Ein Sof was referred to by the Kabbalists as the most ancient of all the ancients. It was always considered as sexless. Its symbol was a closed eye. While it may be truly said of Ein Sof that to define is to defile it, the rabbis postulated certain theories regarding the manner in which Ein Sof projected creations out of itself, and they also assigned to this absolute not being certain symbols as being descriptive, in part at least, of its powers. The nature of Ein Sof they symbolize by a circle, itself emblematic of eternity. The hypothetical circle encloses a dimensionless area of incomprehensible life, and the circular boundary of this life is abstract and measureless infinity. So I got the chills when I read that the nature of Ein Sof they symbolize by a circle, itself emblematic of eternity. So that how I want to make the reference to, let's see, I've got the other tab here. So this is not quite, well, this is what a diagram that we will be looking more into, but the circle or the quantum dot, there are so many parallels and correlations between the circle, because when you think of the term ohm starts with the O, and as we've talked many times in our Zoom calls, O is the actual primordial sound, not I. I is a distortion from the O. Just an idea, but that is something that we've talked a lot about on this channel in our Patreon. And of course, this is not going public. This is just for the Patreon members. Now we continue. According to this concept, God is not only a center, but also area. Centralization is the first step towards limitation. Therefore, centers which form in the substances of Ein Sof are finite because they are predestined to dissolution back into the cause of themselves, while Ein Sof itself is infinite because it is the ultimate condition of all things. I can't help but notice this phrase here: centralization is the first step towards limitation. Central government, perhaps? Central bank? Just throwing that out there. To probably, as we've looked at the work of Pierre Sabac, government, angels, boats, ships, they're all the same. They're all from the same source. How does that tie into Ein Sof, though? Well, we'll look into that. So to continue here, the circular shape given to Ein Sof signifies that space is hypothetically enclosed within a great crystal-like globe, outside of which there is nothing, not even a vacuum. Within this globe, symbolic of Ein Sof, creation and dissolution take place. Every element and principle that will ever be used in the eternities of cosmic birth, growth, and decay is within the transparent substances of this intangible sphere. It is the cosmic egg which is not broken till the great day be with us, which is the end of the cycle of necessity when all things return to their ultimate cause. Now, I'm not saying that I understand everything that I'm reading here, but I am super excited to help guide and try to share this content with us, as Generation Z is essentially a mystery school. So we're trying to basically become initiated to help us understand this new paradigm of consciousness that we're emerging into. But let's review what we just read there. Every element and okay, so the circular shape given to Ein Sof signifies that space is hypothetically enclosed within a great crystal-like globe, outside of which there is nothing, not even a vacuum. Is that perhaps this? The circular shape given to Ein Sof signifies that space is hypothetically enclosed within a crystal-like globe, outside of which there is nothing, not even a vacuum. Makes me wonder about Bill Nye the Science Guy saying that we are in a closed vacuum. Of course, the context was that he's talking about civilization and the garbage that we're throwing out there, and not talking about that we can ever leave the celestial sphere. But just when we analyze the references from these mystery teachings, very interesting that they say we are signifies that space is hypothetically enclosed within a great crystal-like globe. Right. So, like I said, this is, it is a nuts and bolts episode, but it is the nuts and bolts episode of the esoteric occult. So it's kind of a blend of the two. And yeah, let's continue here. In the process of creation, the diffused life of Ein Sof retires from the circumference to the center of the circle and establishes a point, which is the first manifesting one, the primitive limitation of the all pervading O. When the divine essence thus retires from the circular boundary to the center, it leaves behind the abyss, or as the Kabbalists term it, the great privation. Thus, in Ein Sof is established a twofold condition where previously had existed but one. The first condition is the central point, the primitive objectified radiance of the eternal subjectified life. So, how many times has Dave used the analogy of the dot? And just recently, Ani did a whole presentation on the quantum dot. And I know that he's well ahead of us with what we're looking into here, but this, I think, is still going to be very helpful to a lot of us in understanding the content that Ani is trying to teach us, because he's not going through the basics. No, no, no. He's advanced in the occult esoteric field. So very fascinating that when the divine essence thus retires from the circular boundary to the center, it leaves behind the abyss, or as the Kabbalists term it, the great privation. Thus, in Ein Sof is established a twofold condition where previously had existed but one. Okay, so about this radiance is darkness caused by the deprivation of the life which is drawn to the center to create the first point, or the universal germ. The first point, that initial dot, the primordial dot, the universal germ. The universal Ein Sof therefore no longer shines through space, but rather upon space from an established first point. Isaac Meyer describes this process as follows. Quote, the Ein Sof at first was filling all and then made an absolute concentration into itself, which produced the abyss, deep, or space, the Avir Kadmon, or primitive air, the Azoth. But this is not considered in the Kabbalah as a perfect void or vacuum, a perfectly empty space, but it is thought of as the waters or crystalline chaotic sea, in which was a certain degree of light inferior to that by which all the created worlds and hierarchies were made. End quote. Note that he refers to how that it is not considered in the Kabbalah as a perfect void or vacuum, a perfectly empty space, but it is thought of as the waters or crystalline chaotic sea. Now, let's refer to Vita Austin, the water whisperer, and the work that she's been doing with capturing the essences of water and ice crystals, continuing the work of Isaru Emoto. Fantastic and very interesting stuff there. And this, honestly, I know it can be a little dry, but it gets very, very interesting. And that's why we're starting from the top. And we'll see how long we go in this episode, but we probably won't cover everything today. Probably for the best to make it a two-parter. As we continue from the actual book, in the secret teachings of the Kabbalah, it is taught that man's body is enveloped in an ovoid of bubble-like iridescence, which is called the auric egg. An ovoid of bubble-like iridescence. Now, just for the sake, what is iridescence? Iridescence is the phenomenon of certain surfaces that appear to gradually change color as the angle or view of the angle of illumination changes. Examples of iridescence include soap bubbles, feathers, butterfly wings, and seashell nacre, and minerals such as opal. Okay, iridescence. Okay. And so it's called the auric egg. From auric, to me, the word aura, plasma donuts, plasma torus, egg. So this is the causal sphere of man. It bears the same relationship to man's physical body that the globe of Ein Sof bears to its created universes. In fact, this auric egg is the Ein Sof sphere of the entity called man. In reality, therefore, the supreme consciousness of man is in this aura, which extends in all directions and completely encircles his lower bodies. As the consciousness in the cosmic egg is withdrawn into a central point, which is then called God, the Supreme One, so the consciousness in the auric egg of man is concentrated, thereby causing the establishment of a point of consciousness called the ego. Okay, let's review this one because this is a pretty powerful phrase here. So therefore, the supreme consciousness of man is in this aura, which extends in all directions and completely encircles his lower bodies. As the consciousness in the cosmic egg is withdrawn into a central point, which is then called God, the Supreme One, so the consciousness in the auric egg of man is concentrated, thereby causing the establishment of a point of consciousness called the ego. As the universes in nature are formed from powers latent in the cosmic egg, so everything used by man in all his incarnations throughout the kingdoms of nature is drawn from the latent powers within his auric egg. Man never passes from this egg. It remains even after death. His births, deaths, and rebirths all take place within it, and it cannot be broken until the lesser day be with us, when mankind, like the universe, is liberated from the wheel of necessity. Okay. Yeah, so I would, just from this part alone, probably like 20 minutes in or so, I would love for you to comment and reach out and ask, like, what, do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? But we're going to continue more. And at the very least, we're going to be explaining the first of the lower world, of the upper worlds here. So the Kabbalistic system of worlds. And even before I continue here, it dawned on me that the entire QAnon phenomena, the 17th letter of the alphabet, to me, and this might upset some people in our Patreon, but to me is you need to understand the mystery schools in order to understand what the QAnon stuff was really about. I think it actually was a very deeply layered project. I don't think that it was just immediately a surface level troll to try to get people to do bad things. And I think that there is a deep focus on the letter Q. So, for example, the Cabal, Kabbalistic, Q. Q level clearance, top secret level clearance is called Q level clearance in the Department of Energy. Why is it Q? When you compare the letters of a Q to an O, as this book explains, the letter O wherever it was that I saw that. My apologies, I can't find it right here. Oh, here we go. It says the primitive limitations of the all-pervading O. Well, what is O to a Q? A Q is simply adding a tail at the end of the O so that it almost provides an escape to this circle, this loop, this feedback loop that we're in. So when you add a tail at the end of it, suddenly, look at that, you can get out. And I think that there's some merit to that. And honestly, the hairs on my arms are standing up when I say this. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my ideas about that. So to continue on with the book here, the Kabbalistic system of worlds. Now let's just see. So for reference, this is the visual here of the Kabbalistic system of worlds. So maybe I can hold up this in a smaller screen so that as I'm reading it, it makes more sense. Right. So while I'm reading, think about this diagram here. This is the system of worlds. So when we talk about the letters X1 to X2, X1 is this outermost circle, then X2 is the next one, then X3, and then they go into A. And I know that, let's see, I know that, oh, I can't zoom in because I'm sharing the screen, but anyway. So we'll just keep those there though. But on the accompanying circular chart, the concentric rings represent diagrammatically the 40 rates of vibration called the Kabbalists' spheres, which emanate from Ein Sof. The circle X1 is the outer boundary of space. It circumscribes the area of Ein Sof. So X1 is the boundary of space. The boundary of space. The nature of Ein Sof itself is divided into 3 parts, represented by the spaces respectively between X1 and X2, X3, and X3, X3, and A1. I should be more clear there. So the boundaries of space respectively between X1 and X2. So if you see my arrow, my cursor, X1 and X2, and then between X2 and X3, then between X3 and A1, and then A1 and A2. And you see how this is the biggest gap, and they progressively get smaller as you move towards the center. So, and thus, X1 to X2 here represents AIN, Ein, the vacuum of pure spirit. X2 to X3 represents Ein Sof, the limitless and boundless. X3 to A1, Ein Sof Or. I don't know actually how to pronounce it. This is Hebrew, but it's the limitless light. So first is the vacuum of pure spirit, then the limitless and boundless, and then the limitless light. It should be borne in mind that in the beginning, the supreme substance, Ein, alone permeated the area of the circle. The inner rings had not yet come into manifestation. As the divine essence concentrated itself, the rings X2 and X3 became apprehensible, for Ein Sof is a limitation of Ein, and Ein Sof Our, or light, is a still greater limitation. Thus, the nature of the Supreme One is considered to be threefold, and from this threefold nature, the powers and elements of creation were reflected into the abyss, left by the motion of Ein Sof towards the center of itself. Towards the center of itself. Does that sound like non-destructive implosion? The essence of the work that Dan Winter talks about? Centripetal charge? So the continual motion of Ein Sof towards the center of itself resulted in the establishment of the dot in the circle. The dot was called God as the supreme individualization of the universal essence. The dot was called God. So just keep in mind when Dave uses that dot metaphor and the concentric circles, we're going deep into what that in the ancient traditions actually talks about. Maybe that's what this video will be, a deep dive into the occult traditions of the dot, but who knows? So the dot was called God, and as being the supreme individualization of the universal essence. Concerning this, the Zohar says, when the concealed of the concealed wished to reveal himself, he first made a single point. The infinite was entirely unknown and diffused no light before this luminous point violently broke through into vision. That I love rereading these, to be honest, and sorry if I'm a little repetitive here, but these terms I think are vast and very important. The quote is, when the concealed of the concealed, note that the first concealed is lowercase and the second concealed is uppercase. So when the concealed of the concealed wished to reveal himself, he first made a single point. Okay, so we're going to continue on. The name of this point is I am, called by the Hebrews Ehyeh. Ehyeh. I'm going to do my best to do the pronunciations. I have no formal training in these pronunciations, but I will read it as it sounds to me. My apologies if it's butchering, but so the dot, the name of this point is I am. I think, therefore I am, or I am, therefore I think. The Kabbalists gave many names to this dot. On this subject, Christian D. Ginsburg writes in substance, the dot is called the first crown because it occupies the highest position. It is called the aged because it is the first emanation. It is called the primordial or smooth point. It is called the whitehead, the long face, macroprosophis, and the inscrutable height because it controls and governs all other emanations. Geez. Okay. Yeah. So again, just we're using this. I'm going to go back to the full text here. Now, yeah, I think that what we're going to do is we're going to simply review the first world of the Kabbalistic systems as this episode. And we're going to leave it there and then see what the audience thinks. If you guys are enjoying it, then we can for sure keep on diving into it. And yes, so, okay, to continue on with this chapter and this page. When the white shining point had appeared, it was called Kether, which means the crown, and out of it radiated 9 great globes, which arranged themselves in the form of a tree. These 9 together with the first crown constituted the first system of Sephiroth. These 10 were the first limitation of 10 abstract points within the nature of Ein Sof itself. So, Kether means crown. If you were, I wonder if there is, let's see, Cabal, Tree of Life. I know that there's images, but just so that you understand what we're talking about, this right here. So, as this diagram depicts, Ein, nothing, Ein Sof, limitless in this second sphere, Ein Sof, hour, limitless light. And the 9 globes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, well, actually, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 globes. This death and knowledge is not a part of the globe, not one of the systems, but Kether is crown, the first one. Okay. So these 9 great globes arrange themselves in the form of a tree, the tree of life. These 9 together with the first crown constituted the first system of Sephiroth, Sephiroth, Sephiroth. These 10 were the first limitation of 10 abstract points within the nature of Ein Sof itself. The power of Ein Sof did not descend into these globes, but rather was reflected upon them as the light of the sun is reflected upon the earth and planets. This really made me stop in my tracks here. The power of Ein Sof did not descend into these globes, but rather was reflected upon them as the light of the sun is reflected upon the earths and planets. Yeah. These 10 globes were called the shining sapphires, and it is believed by many rabbis, that the word sapphire is the basis of the word sephira, which is the singular of Sephiroth. The great area which had been privated by the withdrawal of Ein Sof into the central point, the Kether, was now filled by 4 concentric globes called worlds or spheres, and the light of the 10 Sephiroth was reflected down through each of these in turn. This resulted in the establishment of 4 symbolical trees, each hearing the reflections of the 10 Sephirothic globes. 4 symbolical trees. Because we know that Aniosaru talks about the 3rd tree that is the tree of death, or the anti-tree, but there's a 4th tree allegedly here. And so the 40 spheres of creation out of Ein Sof are divided into 4 great world chains as follows. But before I read you out these, remember that the dot is called the first crown. Where was it that the shining point had disappeared, which means the crown, to arrange themselves in the form of the tree. These 9 together form the first crown, constituted the first tree of Sephiroth. Okay, maybe I was up here. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the part where it talks about the 40 different, well, whatever. I'm sure that I will figure out what I wanted to bring out. But anyway, to continue on here. Okay, yeah, my apologies for that. But right, to go back, sorry, this is all, I read this today, so I'm still just trying to collect my thoughts and, trying to go at a slow pace and not just jam through all this information as I tried to do in the Krakens, because this is a Patreon episode. So I want us to be able to understand it and follow along and not feel too confused and all that by what we're trying to talk about here. But I want to point out the power of Ein Sof did not descend into these globes, but rather was reflected upon them as the light of the sun is reflected upon the earth and planets. Now, I'm just going to do a real time look at the channel Vibes of Cosmos. I brought this up on the Patreon, on the Zoom call last night. So I'm just showing you a visual here, which I hope that you can see it. Number 3 of the Vibes of Cosmos documentary, The Black Sun. And in this episode, it explains that the black sun at the, what is this? Oof. So in their paradigm, we're in this enclosed sphere with a flat surface, and the black sun is at the bottom, and it is refracting the light through the earth, which gives us the sunlight and moonlight. So that's what I think of when I read what Manly P. Hall is describing in The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Now, if you're interested in the Vibes of Cosmos stuff, I would be more than happy to do episodes where we talk about this cosmology, because this cosmology, I think, is very accurate to what is going on. At least it's something that I resonate very deeply with. But continuing on with Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages, the Qabbalistic Systems of Worlds. So we're going to go into, here are the 40 spheres of creation out of Ein Sof, and they are divided into 4 great world chains as follows. But so I'm going to bring up this so that you can see alongside me here. And so A1 to A10. A1, I know it's small, but my cursor A1 to A10. So then you've got this dark line here. So A1 to A10 is the Atziluth, Atziluth, the boundless world of divine names. B1 to B10, B1 to B10, known as Bria, the archangelic world of creations. C1 to C10 is called the Yetzirah, the hierarchical world of formations. And D1 to D10, Asiya, the elemental world of substances. So we can even see here that the words, I know it's very small, but it even says Atziluth, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. These 4 words there. So basically, everything starts at this line here on the outer boundary. This is the representation of the divine supreme being. And every layer that you go further into the circle, you are actually becoming more separated from the original source. And it's a vibratory emanation. Each concentric circle is its own vibratory resonation or oscillation, perhaps. I'm sure there's all these different terms we can use. But again, the first 3 are still like the primordial Ein Sof or Ein Sof hour. But then it splits off when we get into the next realms. So we're going to just read. Sorry, we're going to do this. Okay. So we're going to just continue reading on here. And then I think, yeah, we will actually just, we will conclude this episode with finishing up just describing the different layers of the first world. So each of these worlds has 10 powers or spheres, a parent globe, and 9 others which conic out of it as emanations, each globe born out of the one preceding. On the plane of Atziluth, which is A1 to A10, the highest and most divine of all the created worlds, the unmanifested Ein Sof established his first point or dot in the divine sea, the 3 spheres of X. This dot, A1, contains all creation within it, but in this first divine and uncontaminated state, the dot, or first manifested. God was not considered as a personality by the Kabbalists, but rather as a divine establishment or foundation. It was called the first crown, and from it issued the other circles of the Atziluthic world, A2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In the 3 lower worlds, these circles are intelligences, planars, and elements, but in this first divine world, they are called the rings of the sacred names. I want to point out, so on the Zoom call, Naomi, thank you for asking this. I was talking about how I don't really subscribe to the heliocentric model as a literal paradigm to believe in. I think it's metaphorical at best. The heliocentric model is a metaphor at best, and it's pure bullshit at worst. But let's try to find a middle ground. So maybe we can look into these mystery schools to understand the metaphors to help us understand the literal translations we've been looking at here. But so these spheres or parent globes and 9 others which conic out of it as emanations, each globe born out of the one preceding. Like, could this be where we get the globe model of the Earth? Not that the Earth is literally a globe, but it could be, as this diagram shows, a sphere, a circle with a flat plane, but then there's something underneath it, perhaps the black sun, which is emanating the cosmic refractions through the Earth's center to create what we see as the sun and the moon. But let's go on here to just talk through A1 to A10. Okay, so from Ein Sof, and I'll bring this up just so that we can see as a comparison. So from Ein Sof, which is the X3 to A1, the A1 is the first crown and the name of the first power of God, which was Ehie, E-H-E-I-E-H, E-H-E-I-E-H, which means I am, or that I am. So right off the bat, this goes deep into the philosophical concepts of I think I think therefore I am, or is it, as Dave has postulated recently, I am therefore I think. From A1 came A2, the first wisdom, and the name of the second power of God was Jehovah, which means essence of being. Jehovah. So what's with the Jehovah's Witnesses and everything about that whole religion? Interesting. And I believe that Jehovah also goes into the demiurge in the Gnostic tradition. I think maybe you can correct me on that, our audience, but I'll have to look into that. From A2 came A3, the first understanding, and the name of the third power of God was Jehovah Elohim, which means God of gods. Here we have the term Elohim, and I know that this is brought up a lot in the esoteric occult research, from the Saturnian black cube worship to the ancient Hebrews to all of that. The Nibiru, the Nephilim, they're called the Elohim. So here we have it right there. From A3 came A4. So remember that each emanation produces the next one. So each vibration of a circle creates the next vibration. And honestly, just think of a ripple. You throw a pebble into a pond and the waves ripple out. But it's not, it's the inversion, where the original ripple is on the outside, not the inside, which I guess goes into the whole concave Earth theory idea, where when you're looking out, you're actually looking in, as above, so below. Okay. Oof. Oh, I'm having so much fun with this. Thank you so much for letting me do this. Continuing. So, Jehovah Elohim means God of gods. From A3 came A4, the first mercy, and the name of the fourth power of God was El, which means God the Creator. From A4 came A5, the first severity, and the name of the fifth power of God was Elohim Gibor, which means God the Potent. From A5 came A6, the first beauty. The name of the sixth power of God was Eloah Vadath, which means God the Strong. From A6 came A7, the first victory. The name of the seventh power of God was Jehovah Tezabboath, which means Lord God of hosts. And I want to point out this now, the Lord God of hosts, we'll be seeing later on, and I'm sure you're familiar with this from Ani Osaru's work about Yal Deboeth, Saboeth. Those words are very tangential. So here we have TZA Boeth, Sa Boeth, which means Lord God of hosts. And the work of Pierre Sabac goes deep into the etymology and polyglottal symbolism of the hosts, which goes into the angels. And, but to continue here. From A8 came A9, the first foundation, and the name of the ninth power of God was Shaddai, El Chai, which means omnipotent. Shaddai El Chai, Chai T. Who knows if that's a connection, but omnipotent. Okay. And then A9, from A9 came A10, the first kingdom. The name of the 10th power of God was Adonai Malek, which means God. Adonai Melech means God. And to round this up here, from A10 came B1, the second crown, and the world of Bria was established. So the A world is the first world, which is the most closest to the Ein Sof R. And then the B world is a second world, which is about the archangels, who are the beings that are essentially establishing the order of the divine supreme deity. I find it fascinating here that God is not the first one. Like it goes, I am that I am, essence of being, God of gods, God the creator, God the potent, God the strong, God of hosts, Lord God of hosts, omnipotent, and then God. But so I'm just going to finish off this paragraph here, and then we're going to call this an episode and see what you all think of it. So the 10 emanations from A1 to A10 inclusive are called the foundations of all creations. The Kabbalists designate from the 10 roots of the tree of life. They are arranged in the form of a great human figure called Adam Kadmon, the man made from the fire mist or red dirt, the prototypic universal man. Now, as I talked about the significance of Q, here we have it again, Adam Kadmon, the letter Q. And Adam Kadmon was made from the fire mist or red dirt, the prototypic universal man. In the At-Ziluthic world, the powers of God are most purely manifested. These 10 pure and perfect radiations do not descend into the lower worlds and take upon themselves forms, but are reflected upon the substances of the inferior spheres. From the first, or At-Ziluthic world, they are reflected into the second, or Briatic world. As the reflection always, now this is extremely telling and important for me in all of these cosmologies that I've been looking at and exploring, and it parallels so much and complements so much with the work that Dave has been doing and will be showing you more of very soon. So as the reflections always lack some of the brilliancy of the original image, so in the Briatic world, the 10 radiations lose part of their infinite power. A reflection is always like the thing reflected, but smaller and fainter. Okay, but so, and a lot of things jump out at me with that, but just the most immediate thing is, what does your car mirror say? The side view mirror of your car. Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. Could that same logic apply to when you look out to the sun and the moon and the sky? Are the objects closer than they appear? But so there we have it. This was just, we've actually, and so I plan on, we're going to go into the next realms of the Kabbalistic cosmogony, because I think that it's very fascinating. And yeah, well, there you have it. Sorry if I was a little all over the place, but I'm still kind of getting my ground in these presentations, and I hope that you enjoyed this one today. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's other things that you want to have covered, but thank you so much for being here, and I will see you all very soon.